Hi, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, on today's show, my special guest is Paul Askoff, and we're going to talk about it's his new book, UFOs The Real Story, Revised Edition 2023. Paul's been to Cyprus so many times, he just loves going out there. Can we please welcome Paul to the show? Hello there.
Hello, Bob, and thank you for having me. A pleasure to be back on again, as always. I look forward to our chat.
Oh, it's absolutely great. What first sparked your interest in the UFOs, and can you tell us about your first sighting in 1968?
Yeah, well, this is it. As a young man, I was an avid reader, so I was always reading books and reading books, but I never had anything on like science fiction or UFOs. I was more into adventure stuff. And we lived on the edge of a small village, and myself and my younger brother, I was 11 and my younger brother was 9, and my father was it wasn't cruel, but it was very strict, and you did as you were told in those days, and it was like, this is your jobs for the day. And the last job for us was taking our dogs and our neighbour's dog. We had a disabled war veteran next door, taking all the dogs for a walk, because we lived right on the edge of the village, and as we literally walked out of our home into fields, there were miles and miles of fields. So we'd been out taking the dogs, come back, and then the routine was we put the dogs away, say good night to mum and dad, got into bed. That was the routine. And this night we put the dogs away, said good night to mum. She said, Dad's in the garden, go and say good night. Now it was, I think, early middle September 1968, long time ago. But you have to think, back in 1968 there wasn't the light pollution that there is now, but there also wasn't the aircraft that there are now, and there were no such thing as police helicopters or ambulance helicopters or any of that. Anyway, we tamed the dogs, come back in, said good night to mum, went outside, and Dad said, come here, sit down. And at the front of our home, we had a bench, a big old, like a church bench. Probably 4 or 5 people could sit on it. And he sat in the middle. I was on his right, my brother on the left. We were looking due east. Our home faced due east. And from that position, south, the sky was completely clear. And to the north, I think I've got that the right way around, the sky was thick cloud, but it finished abruptly in this thick bank of cloud. Now it was just dusk, it was just beginning to get dark, and because there was no light pollution, you could see the first of the larger constellations and the brighter magnitude stars were coming out. And my father actually had a telescope. I mean, he was a coach driver, he wasn't sort of an astronomer or anything like that, but he was very interested and liked to involve the kids. So the 3 of us are looking at the sky, and he's saying, what do you think that star is? What constellation is it? And as the 3 of us are looking at the stars, all of a sudden, out of this bank of cloud came 2 brilliant pearly white objects, perfectly spherical, about the size, in English, about the size of a 5-pence piece at arm's length. So they were quite large, really. And one was slightly to one side and slightly behind the other. And they came out and then they stopped dead. There was no deceleration. They were moving very fast, and then boom, they were still. They stayed the same relative position to each other, and there was nothing apparently joining them together. There was no rotation, no other lights, no bits sticking out or anything. They were just brilliant pearly white, and you could actually see the light from them reflecting off the surface of this bank of cloud. So the 3 of us are just sat there, mouths agape, as you can imagine, looking at the sky. And as this happened, I got a voice quite clearly, and I can only tell you what I experienced, a masculine, friendly voice. And it was very clear, and it was directly in my head, and it just said, oops, we hadn't meant to have been seen. Now, the other thing that I got from it as well, that it seemed familiar as well as friendly, and it was like something that I shouldn't have been too worried about. And it was just, oops, we've overstepped something, don't worry about it type of thing. And that was the whole impression that I got. I didn't hear anything else, but that was very clear in my head. They were still for a few seconds, maybe 5 seconds maximum, and then immediately they were moving very quickly, going directly away from us due east. Now, my father, he hadn't said anything, but we watched them until they disappeared out of sight. And the three of us were in absolute silence. And that was the other thing, complete silence throughout. There was no other noise whatsoever. And retrospectively, when I asked my brother and my father if they had heard anything, they never heard anything whatsoever. It was just total silence. And they just faded away in the distance. We probably had them in sight for maybe no more than a minute from start to finish.
Right.
But the thing for me was that they were so, and as they moved away down this, you can imagine a bank of clouds undulating a bit. And as the two of them got closer to it, the reflection off the surface was brighter and then dimmer, then brighter. But they kept that perfect line going away from us very quickly. No acceleration, bang, they were moving fast. And they stayed like that till they disappeared in the distance and we couldn't see them any longer. And the three of us were still sat in silence. And my father was the first to speak, and he said, well, there's nothing we've got that can do that.
Oh.
And he did his national service with the RAF.
Ah.
But that was the hook that got me into it, because for me, they were so odd, so bizarre, so alien, for want of a better term, that it couldn't have been anything else. It was obviously something not terrestrial. And so that was what got me into it. And it must have spurred my father on, because he bought just then, Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods had just come out. And he went out and bought that. So as soon as he finished, that was the first book of that sort of genre that I read. And that's how it started for me, because it was so bizarre. It was like, why don't I know about this? Why isn't it in the newspapers? And the other thing what got me as well was, because it was so obvious in the sky, really bright, how come nobody else was reporting it? How come nobody else had seen it? And that was the other thing. Is this happening to other people all the time and it's just not getting onto the newspapers or whatever? I mean, think about it. This is 1968, so there was no internet, there was no mobile, nothing like that. So to try and find anything out, and you only had 3 television channels, I believe, then, in black and white, and you push the button on the TV. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
People remember that, yeah. And so there wasn't the communication, the instant communication that we had now. And so for me to sort of try and find things out then, it was getting on the local, because I was only 11 or 12 years old, getting on the local bus service and going into the nearest large cities to even find a bookstore that would order books on UFOs. Because then the authors that were coming out then, Jenny Randalls had just started writing. People like Donald Kehoe, Flying Saucers from Outer Space, you know, and they were the authors at the time.
Mm.
And so you had to literally get out there and find out what you wanted and get the libraries to order them or the bookstores to order them. And that's how I started the collection of reading my UFO and everything to do with it.
How did your background in working in medicine and the military influence the way you approached the UFO research? And what inspires you to write UFOs The Real Story, the original?
Well, I think in some ways, having the medical background and the military for that matter, when you're presenting both of those working scenarios, if you're presented with A, you do 1, 2, 3. If presented with B, you do 4, 5, 6. And you've got these protocols that you have to follow. And I think for me, it gave me a sort of a logical handle onto how we perceive things and how we don't see all of what's there, and how our normal electromagnetic spectrum and the vision and the hearing, the things that we deal with on a daily basis is such a small part of what's actually out there in the universe. And I think over time, that's something that's changed. Because for me, it was, you know, I mean, when you go back to the 60s and 70s, it was always, you know, aliens from outer space and they'd come from galaxy whatever. And
Oh,
but now
yeah.
it's moved on to the interdimensional hypothesis, which I think is much more accurate. But that was the background that I had that sort of helped me do it. But what got me, I think, to write the book was so many authors, nothing against them, write about a specific subject. So you'll get people that will write about Rendlesham Forest or Skinwalker Ranch or Roswell, or they'll write about the Scottish Triangle or, you know, Bermuda Triangle or poltergeists or Bigfoot. And they're all, for me, over the years, I sort of came to the realization that they're all pieces of the same pie. They all connect. And it's only by understanding that it allows you to sort of broaden your horizons and think outside the box. And I think that's why I started, my experiences have led me down that road. And what I did was I just sort of started making little notes, if you like, or little chapters of different experiences. And then by putting it all together, the hardest thing for me writing the book was put it into some coherent sort of chronological order that made sense at the end of the day. So that was the history of how the book came about.
What do you think most UFO books get wrong that you could try to correct?
Oh, I don't know about most UFO books because everybody has their own opinion, and it's like I always say, I'm not an expert, and I don't think anybody can say they're an expert because we really, truthfully, don't know. We all colour our beliefs to our own experiences.
Yes.
And so people that maybe go on the poltergeist side of things and the paranormal side of things, they will colour it from that. People that maybe, as I did initially, with that one physical sighting. So for me, it was I wanted to know the nuts and bolts and the physics of it and how something can work that way. But you get now these astrophysicists and cosmologists and these people with far better brains than me that are saying that this now they're bringing in the dark energy and dark matter. But the problem for us as a normal layman, as Joe Public, how do we measure and how can we think of this dark energy and dark matter that makes up 90% of the universe? But the problem is we can't measure it. We can't see it. It's like if I just go onto the electromagnetic spectrum that we know about, on our ordinary matter, I'll call it, which is what we deal with on a daily basis. You've got the long, low energy radio waves at one end, and then it comes up through the infrared and then the visible spectrum that we have. And then it goes out through gamma ray, X-rays to gamma rays and the shorter wavelengths and higher energy at that end. But the thing is, we only see like 1/10 of 1%. And that's all we see, that's all we're aware of. So our science knows about these other frequencies, if you like, these other vibrations that are around us, but we only know that bit. Now, that still doesn't take into account the dark energy and dark matter. And the latest sort of figures that they're bandying about is sort of 2/3 of the universe is made up of dark energy. So you're talking 67% is dark energy. And then there may be 33% will be dark matter. And the tiny 4 or 5% that's left over, that is our ordinary matter that we know about. So we are only aware as a human race of 5% of what's actually out there, but we only see on a daily basis what we deal with on a daily basis, that 1/10 of 1% of the 5%. So it's such a tiny, tiny amount, and there's this going on around us all the time. And that's just my perception that I've grown to believe now, that with all this other energy, all these other frequencies, all these other vibrations, they're around us all the time. But because we're not tuned into it, we're completely unaware of it.
In your research, Do UFO sightings point more towards extraterrestrial technology, interdimensional phenomena, or something else entirely?
Both, actually, that you've just mentioned. I would say extraterrestrial because they're not of our plane, our vibration on the Earth, and interdimensional because they use. I'll just throw another analogy at our listeners now. Imagine our ordinary matter as an LP, as a record, right? So you've got radio waves at one end, gamma rays at the other, and we've got that tiny bit that we see in the middle of it. So, but that's just the ordinary matter. Then you include the dark energy and dark matter. And so there's a whole stack of records that are on different frequencies within the same space. So you've got a full stack of records that are in this area, but we only do that tiny bit of one. So it's not so much that the extraterrestrial, as in they're coming from Alpha Centauri or Pleiades or whatever, which they may be, but they don't use light energy and we think of the speed of light. That's our physics, and that is true of everything we've observed. If you go back to the 2020, when the Pentagon released the Tic Tac, Gimbal and Go Fast videos, the 3 videos that they released to the public. Now, at the time, they actually, if you read their report, they'd got 80 of these reports like this, where the videos that they showed us had been recorded on the infrared gun cameras of the F-18 Super Hornets.
Yeah.
They'd also been seen by the pilots, I mean, you know, professional observers, but they'd also been recorded on radar on the carrier fleet underneath that was on the sea surface. So that were 3 different mediums that these had been seen in, and they released the infrared imaging that we saw that's being released on the television. Now, there's 80 of these, and then when people inquired afterwards why they hadn't released the others, it was like not in the national interest, you know, the usual.
Oh yeah, lose the explanation.
Yeah, the usual get out clause. But the thing is, for me, is that this has been covered up and the evidence has been there all the time, but none of it has been, or very small amount of it has been released to the general public.
That's true. Why do you think UFO sightings are often tied to other paranormal phenomena?
Yeah, because a lot of them have the same going, it's like an interdimensional thing, going up and down. It's all to do with energy and higher energy and lower energy. And I would say, people forgive me, but on the Earth, we're a pretty low energy, really. So on that stack, we'll say we've got a stack of 25 records. We're only about third or fourth from the bottom, I think. And there's all this other energy. And I think that ET, I'll use that as a coverall phrase,
Yeah.
the extraterrestrials and their technology use the energy from the different and the higher vibrations. And that is why we only see them when they're passing through our energy field, when they're passing through our visible spectrum, because otherwise the rest of the time they're in a higher energy or a lower energy and we can't even see it. Now, it's funny, we were talking about Paul and going to Bempton earlier, but a few years ago he was doing an interview with Chris Evers at Bempton, and my wife and I went over, and I was walking down with Paul to the viewpoint where there's all the boards and the fencing.
Yeah. The platforms are.
Yeah. And as we're walking down to the platform, there were flashes in the sky there, and we saw lights in the sky. And then when Paul was actually being interviewed by Chris, there was maybe there at the front end of the platform nearest the sea. We were at the back, away from there. And literally, as we were at the back, there were flashes in the sky. Now, it was, if there's just like, for one person to see a flash, it could be a medical condition, you know, it could be a trick or whatever, something just catching the sunlight. Yeah. But when there's 6, 7, 8 people all see the same thing, then it's obviously not that. There's obviously something happening. And there were a few times in the middle of Paul's recording and having the interview with Chris Evers, and in the middle of if you listen carefully in the background, there's a few times where there's a few people with these choruses of "ooh," where we saw these flashes. And I believe that's just literally where they're coming through from one frequency to another, from one dimension to another, one vibration to another. And as they go through our energy and they go through our visible spectrum, that's when we see them.
But when we talk about Bempton and places like that, there's pockets of places around the world where things appear like that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's people, everybody's heard of the Bermuda Triangle, Skinwalker Ranch and all these others, the Walsh Triangle. There's so many of them. And I think the natural electromagnetic anomalies within the geomagnetic influence of the Earth. So they completely cover the Earth, and there's dozens, hundreds of these places. And so you get these, people call them portal areas and UFO hotspots and all this. But also in these areas, you can also get high paranormal activity. And that is why you get the high paranormal activity, because it's where these energy fields can cross and you can get this overlap. A good one was, which I actually saw. Have you seen Trey Hudson with the Meadow?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've had Trey. He's been on show.
Yeah, where he was videoing across the field, across the meadow, and his colleagues disappeared, and they felt cold and silence, and then they came out the other side, and they went back to normal, and they reappeared back on the infrared camera. And I think that's a good example of somebody entering this field, because one thing that you get that's a commonality between all these fields, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's UFOs, whether it's poltergeist phenomenon, a lot of them, and you get this absolute silence is one thing. And I think that's because you're in a frequency where you're out of our, I know hearing's different because it has to come through a medium, but you're out of our normal hearing range. So there's nothing, it's just complete silence because there's nothing there. And then also it's the same with the stillness. You don't hear the birds singing, you don't hear the motorway traffic, anything else. But people often say they get an aura and they feel it and they get terrified. People do get absolutely petrified of these areas. So much so that even going back to the same location makes them very uneasy, very wary. And that's because your energy is going into a different energy and into a different vibration. And it's like, for me, that's a natural, what can I say, emergency alert for your body to say, we're not supposed to be here. This is a different frequency to where you're supposed to be, type of thing. So I think when people are getting afraid and getting really scared and terrified of these things, it's because they're entering these portal areas and these pockets of different energy. And the body, the higher soul, if you like, knows that's not where they're supposed to be. So it's like a wake-up call saying you need to back off and you need to get out of it.
It's strange you're saying that. I've been up there. I've been going up there for years and years. And once I was up there and I said to Paul, right, I'm going off with me tri-field meter, just going up, and I got scared. I felt as though something was watching me. And I had to shout for Paul to come and walk me back.
Yeah.
And I've heard of people who've been to Bempton and said, never going back there ever again.
Yeah. They get that. It's a real deep-rooted fear. Andy Ramsden makes you laugh how he tells this story. Yeah. Brilliant. I love it. Yeah. But that's what happens. And it's because it's a different frequency. And it's not where we're supposed to be, because your higher soul, if you like, is aware of it, it wants you to back off and come away.
Yeah, well, like you're saying, Andy, he said I can be up there 5 minutes or 20 minutes and I want to just go back home.
Yeah.
And he said to Paul, will you walk me back? So Paul said, I'm walking you back up there, but I've got to walk back on my own then. And we had to
Yeah.
laugh about it. You know,
Yeah.
it's laughable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rebecca's saying, do you think ley lines have a part to play, Paul?
I think absolutely they do. If you go back to, and one thing that I touch on the book, and it's not 100% true, because over time things get muddled. But if you think going back in time, how we were hunter gatherers and people used to hunt and stay in groups for security, really, and to make their own like little farmsteads, if you like, to support that group. But what they used to do was they'd have a group there, a group over there, different places. But a local wise man, shaman, woman, whatever you want to call them, person of the woods, that was more in tune. People spiritually were always more in tune with the earth than we are now. Now we're very materialistic, everything's solid around us, and we're unaware of the influence that Wi-Fi and all these other things have around us. But going back then, a local shaman, for want of a better term, would bless marriages, would bless crops and things that were important to the community. And it was all to do with food and survival, really, in those days. And often they used to use the ley lines and the power points where they crossed. So you'll often get standing stones, Brudston near you, that mark as a marker on these points. They're an energy point, but also Brudston being a point, good point in question. They were places of worship because the local communities used to come to that place and give them gifts with the hope of a blessing to bless a pregnancy or a harvest or whatever. Now, over time, this place of worship then becomes a church. And if you think about it, even the Norman conquest and after the Romans even built over and stayed in the same spots over these power points. And even many villages now, you go out into the countryside and a lot of these villages, there's standing stones, there's churches, they're often on crossroads in the middle of nowhere. And it's because they were the original ley lines and they were the original points of power that people were aware of, and it's only with modern society that we've got out of this, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Some researchers claim advanced technology may come from recoveries UFO craft. How credible do you think those claims are?
Yes, I do think they are credible. Now, exactly to what extent, I really don't know. I mean, you get the people that have come out that have said, you know, transistors, microfibers, all these other modern technology are back engineered. Now, I can believe that. But the problem for us is, will we ever have proof? I mean, that leads me on again to disclosure as well, Bob. Will we ever get disclosure? I think we may, but only to a certain extent, because if you think about it, successive governments worldwide have covered the UFO phenomenon and any reverse engineering.
Yeah.
They've covered up for 75 years. So yes, you may get some disclosure, and it's like now how they've been very cagey of how they admitting that there is UFOs out there, or UAPs as they conveniently calling them. I think, to be fair, UAPs are more of a correct term, but to 90% of the ufologists out there, we've called them UFOs for 70 years. It's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're calling them now, isn't it? UAPs.
Yeah. So, but I think that is more accurate. But going on to the disclosure side of things, yes, they're now saying there is something out there. Yes, it warrants further investigation. Yes, they've released some videos and more recently as well. However, I only think that what they're doing, if you think about it from a psychological point of view, at the end of the Second World War, there was a lot of respect and a lot of secrecy and a lot of people involved in the military. So when you were told to keep a secret, you kept a secret.
Mm.
Well, if you think about it now, on the Western side of things, especially the Western world, there's been less and less wars. I know they keep going on, but less and less wars. So because of that, the armed forces throughout the Western world have been reduced. And as such, you don't get that conscription, you don't get that national service, and you don't get that automatic respect and automatic secrecy. So where, going back to Roswell, people were told to be quiet, so they were quiet. Now they'd be out with the mobile phone straight away and saying,
Yeah,
look at this, you know, and within 10 minutes, it's out on YouTube and everybody in the world knows about it. So it's becoming more difficult. So I think we're getting this drip feed, if you like, of uh, gradually things being unveiled and gradually things being made more public awareness. I mean, you just go back even 30 years and ask somebody what a UFO was, ask somebody what an alien was, whatever, and they wouldn't have a clue. But then we've got all this modern technology now, and the films especially. Paul being a good one, there you go. But that was an alien grey. That it was more of a comedic thing. However, it's like subliminally making people aware of aliens and greys and all the rest of it. So now everybody knows about aliens, everybody knows about flying saucers, everybody knows about, you know, UFOs and all the rest of it. So it's not a thing that's been covered up, and it's been introduced into the public psyche, if you like, through the back door, so that where at the end of the Second World War people would have been shocked and horrified and thought at the end, you know, War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells, yeah, the War of the Worlds were coming and that was it. Well, now that's not going to happen. I think because people are aware of it and because it's an acceptable thing now, and they've pushed it and pushed it through the back door and through this subliminal type things where people are aware of it, so you won't get that panic like you would have done.
exactly. Yeah. Why do some people seem to have multiple encounters throughout their lives and some don't?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know. Well, I have an inkling. And it all comes down, it's like everything is energy, and it comes down to that energy. And I think some people, right, just as an example, C5, you've got people now that meditate to see things and attract things. That's good, that's wonderful. Now, other people, and I have to say myself included, see UFOs, I'm not saying all the time, but very often. So I've videoed them, lots on pictures, lots of photographs, and I think it's just some people are more in tune. And it's nothing about people being more advanced or whatever. It's just some are more aware of it, and maybe just that being tuned to it that little bit, they're able to pick it up easier. Now, I was discussing earlier how we, when you asked earlier if I was in Paphos, and we've been like 15 times, and I'm always looking at the sky,
Yeah.
never seen anything. And there's a few other people said Cyprus, especially Western Cyprus, is a bit of a hotspot. And I thought, well, I've never seen a damn thing. And then lo and behold, at the end of last year, I had what I would consider a good sighting. I was unfortunately on my own, but there you go. Shall I show you the picture, Bob?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Well, where we were actually on holiday in Paphos, and where we were, it's on the southwest of the island. And our balcony from our hotel is actually looking just slightly west of south, not quite due south, but just slightly west of south. So in front of us is the normal air corridors that you can see the aircraft going up and down.
Yeah.
So, oh, if I find this picture. So if you can see, you see that okay?
Yeah, I can see that photo of you. Yeah, we can
Now
see that
that's looking,
photo.
yeah, that's looking towards the air corridor where the main aircraft go up and down past Cyprus, mainly east to west. So I'm actually sat on the balcony watching me flight radar, watching aircraft going home, because it was sort of tea time-ish, 5-6 o'clock, and a lot of flights leave Cyprus on the way back to Europe. They were going to Dusseldorf, they were going to Krakow, they were going to Manchester, they were going to Stansted, and I could see them all on my flight tracker. So as I'm watching that, and then all of a sudden, as I'm looking to my right, almost, not quite due west, but almost, is this light appeared. Now, it's above that palm tree, just a little dot of light. And all it was like the glitter ball off a Strictly Come Dancing.
Yeah.
And it looked like that. And it was stationary. So I'm looking on the flight tracker, there's nothing there. Because at first I thought, well, the sun's just gone down. It could still be reflecting the sun from an aircraft, but it wasn't. It was stationary. So what I did was I tried to take a couple of photographs. And the best one I got was that. But on the camera, it came out like a sort of trapezoid, like a spinning top almost.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So that was what I got on the camera. Now, going on from that, it was on in sight for about 30 seconds, and then it just faded away and disappeared, and there was nothing there. But there was nothing on the flight tracker anyway. Now, going back to what we were saying earlier about things going through different dimensions, going through different frequencies, that was obviously when it was just within our visible spectrum. But to go on from that and take it a stage further, very often people see things differently. And that's because people themselves are at different frequencies, but also the digital cameras that we use don't see the same as we see. I've seen things in the sky and then managed to get a picture of it, and it looks completely different on the picture that I've managed to take. And it's because the digital camera picks up different frequencies to what we do.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I understand that. Question from Steph here. Question for Paul. Have you had any reports of sightings around the north of Doncaster?
North of Doncaster. Right. So, difficult to say. I've had a few. I mean, when I was in the Doncaster area, that first sighting that I had was just south of Doncaster. That was in South Emsall. And I've also had sightings since, and I'm trying to think where it was, near north of Doncaster. Yeah, Selby. I had a good sighting in Selby. Now there's one where I was with my first wife and we lived in Selby, and we saw two lights that came over the top of us. And my wife saw them first and shouted at us. And they were like car headlights through fog. You can imagine just two white lights.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But you couldn't see the car. And it was like, how weird is that? And it was moving really, really slowly over the top of us. So my wife shouted at me. So we had two young boys then. So there's me, my wife, the dog, two small boys looking at these two car headlights moving very slowly over the top of us. And then all of a sudden, as I was thinking of going to get my camera, it was just like they moved on warp drive and whack, they'd gone. Literally within a second or two, they were out of sight. They moved that fast. So from moving really, really slowly and then poof, and they'd gone. And it was like, wow. So didn't manage to get a picture of anything. So I took the dog for a walk, looking more at the sky than the dog. Came back. As we came back, maybe 20 minutes later, these two lights came back, moving slowly again, but in the opposite direction.
Ah.
And I watched them, and they were moving sort of in an easterly direction until they moved out of sight, and then they'd gone, and they just sort of gradually faded away in the distance. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is years later, I was in the British UFO Research Association, and I've been in Beaufort for a few years, and then got to be one of their investigators. Got friendly with Philip Mantle, and
Oh,
he
yeah.
says, "Oh, come over, whatever." And he didn't live far away, Philip. So I went over to his house, and we've been talking about a case that I was going to investigate. And as we're talking about this case, we're just talking and having a cup of tea. And then I told him what I'd just said. And he went, "I saw that." And I went, "You what?" He says, "I can tell you exactly when it was." And I went, "Really?" And he says, "It was July 1984 or something." And I went, "How do you know that?" And he went, "Because I saw it as well." And he'd just finished working Tingley, finished working Morley, and was going out over Tingley, like where Tingley roundabout is and that way. And he saw the two lights as well. And he said Beaufort had actually got a lot of sightings of it between the East Coast and then Leeds in the centre. But it was just weird that I recited the story to Philip, and then he went, "I saw them." And it was like,
Ah, marvelous,
God.
isn't it?
Yeah, amazing.
Dragon Ball Rising here. Paul, did you have any encounters or strange occurrences while working as a paramedic?
Well, yes and no. You see, it's a difficult one because very often you see lights in the sky, and that's all they are. You can't describe them as anything else because it's just like a star that moves or whatever. It's unexplained. It's not on any apps, but something's moving. But that's all there is. You don't see anything else, so you can't. There's no sort of proof as such. And then towards the end of my career, I was working in the management suite for the ambulance service, and we were at Unit 41 where the M1 crosses the M62, and the police are there as well with the dogs and their helicopter. So part of my job involved knowing where the helicopters were. Now, the ambulance service helicopter had gone to bed. The police service helicopter were on standby but not being used. But the one thing that happened then, there were 12-hour shifts. So you were doing 12-hour days or 12-hour nights. So because you were sat at a computer, whenever you got a break, you used to make a point of getting up and going for a walk to get a bit of exercise. And this day or this night, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And my colleague and I used to get our breaks at the same time. So we'd just go off and walk around the industrial estate for 30 minutes just to get the exercise. And as we're walking back towards the ambulance headquarters, this light came out of a cloud. Now, you have to think on in an industrial estate, there's a lot of background light pollution. You can only see the really brightest stars and the moon, and that's about it. So to see this light come out, and first of all, we thought it was an aircraft coming into Leeds Bradford because it was, you could say it was on the more or less on the flight path due east from like down the M62 corridor towards Pontefract as we were looking. And it came out of this cloud and seemed to get brighter like an aircraft with landing lights coming towards us, but then it remained stationary. Now, I don't know why, but I got this feeling and I got my phone out and I started recording, and I recorded 18 seconds of video of this stationary object, and it was just an oval object, but it had white, green and red lights flashing within it. There were no apparent strobes, nothing sticking out, no noise or anything like that. It remained stationary. And then after 18 seconds, I turned my phone off because I wanted to look with my eye rather than looking at the screen on the phone. And I put it down as I'm looking at it. And as I looked at it, it was just said, "Okay, bye." And it just went sideways. I went back into the cloud where it had come from. And it was the weirdest thing. And straight away, it was like that connection of, and don't ask me why, but again, just the feeling that you get that it was, I've shown you that I'm here and now I'm off again. And we never saw it again. And it was like, So I've got an 18-second of this light in the sky, but even then you still can't say what it was. Yes, there's nothing on the apps, but no other person, as far as I knew, reported it. But going back, that's the only real thing, because you do see lights in the sky, but trying to justify them or look at it logically, like it could be different tests, it could be military, it could be civilian aircraft. At that time, there are no normal flights out of Leeds Bradford Airport, so it was just something that the only thing I've really seen while I've been in uniform.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. How do you distinguish genuine UFO cases from hoaxes or misidentifications?
Very difficult. And you're always going to have this problem. And this is why I think the more people you can get and the more you can do the research. I mean, now there's apps for the ISS, for different space debris, you've apps for aircraft, and you've all these other things that help you, apps for where all the planets are, so you know, or you should know, what's in the sky in that direction. So that helps. And then also having other people with you, like we had a September 2021, we had a good middle of the afternoon, well, 5 o'clock, September, bright blue skies, a bit like today, really. Blue, beautiful blue skies, and there was something like a star in the sky, and it was like, whoa, that shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be able to see that. Got my wife, got the binoculars, got all the neighbours, and in the end, it was in sight for 30 minutes, and 13 people, 8 adults and 5 children saw it. So that was one that looked like a donut on its side, you know, a ring donut.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was all these other little orbs flickering and moving around it. It were amazing. And I just wish I was setting my telescope up to try and get a closer view of it when it went and zoomed off to the north and we didn't see it anymore. But it had been stationary for like, or almost stationary for nearly 30 minutes. So, but yeah, 13 people saw that. Nothing on any apps. Why was it there? What was it? So when you get something like that, where different people are seeing things and you're all agreeing how odd it is and the rest of it, to the naked eye, it was just like a very bright star in a blue sky. But I've got some 25x70s, really big, heavy binoculars. So when you're reclined and you can rest your arms, you can actually look properly, because otherwise you're like, oof.
Oh, yeah. Tied with it, don't you?
Yeah, but looking at it like that, where they supported, you could actually see it was like a ring donut on its edge with these other smaller ones around it. But all you could see with the naked eye was just a white blob, you know.
Yeah, I know. If UFOs are real and intelligent, what does that mean for humanity?
Oh, good question. Well, this is another, you get the different views on this, where we're sort of, you get people of the view that we were created to grow with this planet, to develop with this planet by ET. You got others that ETs are benevolent and helping us. You got others that say ET are malevolent and demons. And so what you've got to think of, in my opinion, I may be wrong, is the same as you get different species on Earth, you get different species of ET too. I think everybody, including ET, are bound by a universal law to do no harm. So it's by how they interpret that as to whether how they interact with us. And I think it's different people will have and always will have different perspectives on how good or bad ET is and how they influence or don't influence the human race. Because you have to admit that paranormal and ufology is a bit of a niche subject. So unless you get somebody who specifically experiences the paranormal or experiences UFOs as the first one that I did, if it's not going to come into your daily lives, and if it don't come into your daily lives, it's hard to accept something that don't interest you, that don't bother you, that you haven't seen. So you've always got that, and because it's something, going back to Paul, the truth with no proof, because we've no proof of it, it's very difficult. And so on a logical side of things, very difficult to prove. But on a scientific, looking at a broader picture, there's got to be more out there.
What discovery about UFOs would most shock the public?
I think that most shock the public is that they've been here and been around us all the time. UFOs have been with us throughout history, through all the time that mankind's been here, and they've been around us all the time. And I think, going back, one of the things I covered in my book was how long, even in medieval paintings and things like that, even with different religions, they all touch on it, and how you get this interface between gods, or whatever they want to call them at the time.
Rick Allen's in chat room. He said, this is his opinion. All the alien types are genetically engineered humans from another planet Earth.
Possible. What can I say? I couldn't possibly comment.
After 50 years,
it's a possibility, yeah.
After 50 years of research, what do you personally believe the phenomenon truly is?
UFOs. Did you say? Sorry, Bob.
After 50 years of research, what do you personally believe the phenomenon truly is?
I think, in my opinion, we were created to grow with this planet and eventually look after this planet. And yes, we've gone completely in the wrong direction, and this is going to have to change. But I think ET created us with this planet as a complete thing, and we need to grow. This is something else. I think the more I've got into this, and the more you realize how complex it is and how it touches other fields, it's more getting more of a spiritual thing, and how we need to grow spiritually as well as technologically. And I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but I do believe that ET have been around us all the time, and I think that is the one thing that people need to get. It's difficult for people to get their head around, really, because it doesn't impinge on a personal level.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rebecca's here. What do you think about the sightings of
biological crafts?
Craft, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, again, thinking about it and thinking of reports, go back to people that have been dealing with abductions. Bud Hopkins, Dolores Cannon, more recently Kath Marden, and all of their thousands of cases. All of them say that the aliens were part of their craft. It was controlled by thought. Everything was done by energy. Therefore, there was no steering wheel as such, and therefore you get this where the ET is in contact with the whole of the craft, and what they think it happens with that craft. That is why you get the illogical movements and the fantastic speed. Allegedly, it's not speed at all. They're not moving. That's our physics, not theirs. But to be part of the craft, it's like you get the instances where Rendlesham was one, where the soldier touched the craft and he says he got a download. And we hear that all over the world with different people getting this download from the craft. And it's because they make it as a whole thing. The craft and the person, the entity that's controlling it, is a complete unit. It's like it all works together. And so you're going to get biological crafts because that's just a natural progression. Instead of being, like a pilot, if you like, it's a complete thing on its own.
After all your research, what questions about UFOs still keeps you awake at night?
Right. This is a good one, Bob. The one thing that I would think, it don't give me sleepless nights, but it makes me think, that is the UFO abduction phenomenon is much more widespread and prevalent than we know about. And I think there's stuff going on all the time. And the thing is as well, because of their complete mastery of the whole of the electromagnetic spectrum, they can isolate people and move people as they want and take them physically or astrally. And this is something that I've come to something that I've come to realize really from the different things, and it explains why some people can be taken physically and some people not. And it's the only explanation, but again, everything comes down to energy and having that control and manipulation of the energy that they can do and we can't. And that is the only thing that I think, how many people has it happened to, myself included, that you're only aware of the tiniest amount of it.
I'm going to say that. Do you ever think you have been abducted yourself then?
Yes.
Because I've been in bed and I've been paralyzed and can't move, and then all of a sudden I feel as though I've just gone back into my body and I'm in bed again. As though I've been lifted and dropped.
I remember as a child, young, maybe, I don't know exactly, and I can't remember, but I would say 8 to 10, 11 years old, before my sighting. And I didn't want to go to bed. And I didn't want to go to bed because they used to come and take me. And it was always little grey monsters. And they used to take me to the same place as well. I knew where I was going. And I hated to go to bed on a night because I was petrified of it, because I knew they were going to come and get me again. And it's only, obviously, retrospectively, that I've got into this now. And it's like, I was very fortunate that I had lunch with Bud Hopkins once, and when I was with Bufora, and I was arranging speakers, just making sure they got to the stage for their bit on time and all the rest.
Yeah.
But part of the good part of it was, I finished up having lunch with Bud, and we just sat there in Sheffield, me and lunch, just talking like good mates. And he says, what are your experiences? I told him about that. And he says, Paul, in my mind, there's no doubt you were abducted as a child. He said, but he said, without doing the regressive hypnotherapy and getting it, he says, it'll always be blocked off from your normal recollections, Do
you think it happens to a lot of children these days? They'll say to the mother, I feel as though I've been off somewhere and come back again. Yeah. And say, don't be so silly.
Yeah. You see, people always try and rationalize things and always try and make things normal. And that's the normal thing to do. But yeah, I think it's much more prevalent than we're led to believe.
Yeah. What you got planned for the future then?
Well, I've just done a documentary for Australian television.
Oh, wonderful.
So, and at the moment I'm looking after my wife, my good lady, but...
good for you.
Yeah, I think I'd like to expand on my book, because it's like everything else. You tend to tweak things and you get new ideas, and other people help as well. But the idea of the book originally was to get all the pieces of the pie and show people that everything is connected and it's energy in all of them. And that's the common denominator for Bigfoot, Dogman, poltergeist, UFOs. It's all different energy that we just see that part of. We experience that little bit of.
I think they've been here thousands of years. Bigfoot and all these, and they just come out in when it opens up for them.
Yeah.
And same as anything like that. Do you think we'll get disclosure this year? There's been lots of reports about somebody's going to say something in July.
I'll
in
believe
America.
it when it happens. Yeah, I'll believe it when it happens, Bob. I still think we'll get this drip feed where the Pentagon and the powers that be will gradually let things come into the public domain and make people aware of it. And by then, people will be so blasé. Oh yeah, we knew about that 10 years ago, and and that's just a way of getting people to accept it.
I think people have changed their opinion about them now.
Yeah,
Like years ago, they wouldn't dare talk about it. Don't be
Yeah.
so stupid. You
Yeah.
never saw anything like that. But nowadays, say, yeah, I've seen this thing in the sky.
Yeah.
I've seen them quite a few times.
Yeah,
The UFOs.
yeah. I've got a good infrared binoculars, and you can just, when it's a bit warmer, just get a nice sunbed out, lay on the lawn, and look at the sky. And there's all sorts moving about up there.
I can imagine there is. And I'm sure the phenomena at Bempton will always be there. I know Rebecca and Steph are coming over in next week. They've never been to Walgate. I have been with Paul quite a few times, and I have videoed them orange lights. I've got them on video. I give it to Paul. Was there, and he walked it road, and I took the video of Paul and the lights in the sky. So it's proof. But they were there that night. So I'm going to take them up there, up to Walgate. I know a place where to park up. You get out of your car and you can see from the top of Walgate, believe it or not, the Humber Bridge. And it's, 50 mile away?
Yeah.
That's why quite high is Walgate.
Yeah. Very good.
So we'll have a great time next week sometime. I've said I'd go with them anyway, show them where to go. And you can always go through to Rootston then. Over tops to Rootston.
Lovely.
And anyway, enjoy. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been always good. Love some lovely questions from people in the chat room as well. It's always nice when people give us some questions to ask you as well, besides my own.
Yeah, I hope I've answered the questions reasonably eloquently and people understood it, but we'll see what happens. I might not be right though, Bob.
I'm sure you have. Right, my guest on Friday, some people like her as well. It's Beth Lee Crowther. She did it. She didn't do it. She was on Channel 5 last year. She did 5 shows. She's an animal communicator. She's really, really good. She's always on This Morning. Is Beth, and she's really nice woman. She's been on my show quite a few times over years, and she always said, I don't mind coming on your show anytime, Bob. So I've always said to people, if you've got a dog and you want some questions from your dog about you, and it's got to be showing its eyes, just send them to me and I relay them to Beth then, and she'll just give you some really. It could be a dog, a cat, a budgie, anything, a snake. And if any of your dogs or animals have died, she'll give a reading from you, know, because they died, and she'll get a reading. People will get a reading off her, and she's really, really nice woman as well.
Lovely.
She's this Friday at 7 p.m. in the UK. You what? Sorry?
I said most people are nice, Bob.
Yes, and you are as well.
Oh, likewise.
As Steph just said, she was brilliant last time she was on the show, Bob. I said, I know she was. Yes, she was as well. She's not bothered. She's been on This Morning. She's been everywhere. She's been on Gogglebox, but she still likes to come on podcasts.
Good. It broadens people's horizons, gets them thinking out there.
Of course it does. I agree with that. I totally agree with that as well. Janice just said another great guest tonight, Bob. And few people said that. enjoyed your interviews tonight.
Lovely. Thank you for having me on, Bob. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And go away and have some more holidays.
I will. Promise.
My mate, one of my mates stuck in Thailand. He went for 2 months. By the time he gets home, it's going to be 3 months.
Oh, well, listen, we were hoping we'd go up to our 90 days because now.
Oh, yes, it is.
The EU, we're only allowed for 90 days. So we had to fly home. So I was hoping it were all going to blow up and we'd get stuck there, but it never happened. Honestly, nothing happened in Cyprus. It just completely normal.
I know. False information again from the media.
Just even the locals were laughing at our tabloid headlines. Honestly.
Terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, awful.
They always said, don't go to Cyprus. Oh, no, don't go there.
Yeah, there were nothing happening. Absolutely normal.
I bet you wanted to stop, didn't you?
Yeah, I was hoping.
I know Martin, my mate, he had to go get another visa.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he said that's another 50 quid. And then I had to find somewhere to stop. So I rented a bungalow for £40 a night for another 3 more bloody weeks. That's where things go in life.
Never mind.
Never mind. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
You take care.
You too.
Finish this show.